Okay, so physics of the paranormal. I wanted us to have a certain set of eyes when we go into these reports because I really try to put pieces together of things that match my own experience. And I think it's important for people to understand when we're dealing with UFOs and aliens that we're dealing with something that is not of what we're used to. So this is John D'Souza, retired FBI special agent, while in the Bureau focused on violent crimes, counterterrorism, and paranormal cases, has testified over 100 times for U.S. courts doing big profile cases, the Unabomber and 9/11 as such. But his subject matter while in the FBI was on UFOs, aliens, and abductions. And that's just really interesting. Considering we have a Pentagon side that has kind of come public, this guy seems to be though he's gone public, somehow no one's making the connecting pieces here that FBI did one and Pentagon did the other, and how come they're not talking with each other and making a giant picture? I don't know why they're not doing that, but for some reason the media hasn't caught on that there's these two segments, and maybe they should get together and put it in paper that people were being abducted or having contact events with aliens, and then this should be legitimate now. But anyway,
Jeff,
go ahead.
Just going to add to that. It's well known that United States intelligence agencies are very much compartmentalized and keep their information to themselves. So there's not much known collaboration between those intelligence agencies.
I didn't know about him until I saw the movie Missing 411, the UFO Connection, in research for this presentation, and was stunned actually, that the FBI had a segment. And so the question he asked, right, David Paulides in his movie asks, "What's your conclusion about people who claim abduction, disappear, and come back?" And John D'Souza replies, "The ones that we report on and talk about, those are real. And I do believe they are connected to extra-dimensional beings that come from outside our reality." Jacques Vallée, right, the astronomer, computer scientist, has spent 60 years studying the phenomenon. And he says the UFO phenomenon represents evidence for other dimensions that simply cannot be understood apart from their psychic and symbolic reality. What we see here is not an alien invasion. It is a spiritual system that acts on humans and uses humans. Really important. I like to point out that I have an essay when President Eisenhower's alleged meeting with gray aliens on my website. And I like to point out that I'm pretty certain right from the get-go during this alleged meeting, I tried to look at the evidence and did this occur? And the first evidence from it comes from a letter from Gerald White, written in April 16th, 1954. And in that letter, he says, "I had forgotten how commonplace things as dematerialization of solid objects had become to my own mind. The coming and going of an etheric or spirit body has been so familiar to me. These many years, I had forgotten that such a manifestation could snap the mental balance of a man not so conditioned. This is a person who apparently was visibly there witnessing this apparent meeting. And it looked to me like this is a paranormal activity that occurred right away in the very first meeting with aliens and humans." And so there's a giant picture here that we're dealing with the paranormal and things that it's kind of a cross of what we constitute as the paranormal is really where the aliens kind of sit themselves or place themselves. We'll be bringing in cryptoids, and I focus that Sasquatch and is also of the paranormal. Skeptical, credible people have gone in studying Sasquatch. Les Stroud is my favorite. This is Survivor Man, right? And of course, I bond with this guy because I did what he did, right? Went into the boonies and lived really close to nature. Though he does a lot of it, more than I ever did. He has a whole series on his YouTube channel, and he's a skeptic. And by the end, he comes to some pretty good evidence that the Sasquatch is in fact a paranormal entity, alongside being a physical being as well too, which I think is where the aliens are sitting. Our other researchers, such as James Fry, have come to the same conclusion. So, in places like the Montana Vortex and the Sierra Nevada mountain range, the Sasquatch is an orb and has been witnessed as an orb. Okay, so physics of the paranormal. Okay, so remember I told you guys that this is therapy for me. So, so I helped a ghost pass on for the first time. And that's something that happened to me last December. It actually occurred. And I documented it on this Reddit to, because I'm going to forget the details, I'll post the post the link here. You can check it out for yourselves. I draw on this you don't need to know the details, but you can read it in your own time. But it helped me understand details about the paranormal, and this experience was really wild for me. And yeah, so the point is it happened at work. There were witnesses, and it was a work environment, and I kind of work in a blue collar environment, so they weren't prone to believing in ghosts. The building was haunted, but a lot of people knew about it. And then I was actually really disturbed being in the environment, and I ended up interacting with it. And over a couple of weeks, I ended up clearing it out, and there were witnesses to that experience. So it's kind of a big story because I added in as much detail as I possibly could to remember it. And so you can check that out if you want to on your own time. Okay, but so I draw on that and that kind of experience for me, creating what I call here the physics of the paranormal. And I draw this from my own research, basically, my own experience and my own research. And this is what we'll be using as we move into these these sightings. First point I need to make: we are not the body. Please watch my video on my YouTube channel. I call We Are Not the Body. I provide the evidence. This is, for me, this is the point of what disclosure actually is. It's not about aliens, it's about humans and who we think we are. And the evidence is in scientists and doctors. We are a consciousness, an energy form housed within a body. And then as a paranormal world that's out there, it's interacting with that aspect of us. And when we don't know we are of an energy form, then we feel like victims to a paranormal presence. But it interacts with us. And the point to understand that you're not the body is that you're projecting energy out. Your thoughts and your feelings can be read by the paranormal entity. So that matters when we're dealing with the paranormal. And it matters, in fact, when we're dealing with UFOs and alien content. So the observation effect is probably one of the most wild aspects of the paranormal. You have to remember that quantum physics demonstrates through the double slit experiment that observation affects reality. So I can't go into it. There's too much detail, but just know that the power of observation has effects on photons and can turn waves into particles. And humans also can know when they're feeling watched, right? You ever had that experience where you're reading a book and then you get up and then all of a sudden someone is staring at you and you can kind of feel that observation? Well, this seems to be enhanced in the paranormal world. And there's a really good story that I'm going to quickly share here. That is actually my favorite evidence of the observation effect of the paranormal. This occurred in Afghanistan in what's called OP Rock. And basically what it was these 8 Marines were housed in a haunted area that had been known for lots of battles. Russia took it over, Taliban took it over, America took it over. And so there's lots of death, lots of battles in the area, and that was haunted. And these Marines came in and they were experiencing all this haunted activity, and it was freaking them out. So my favorite example of this is one of the guys is on patrol, he's watching, and then he sees with his night vision glasses, he sees Taliban on the top of an outlook on a ridge. He gets his gun out to like a thermal reader to engage, and there's nothing there. He's confused. So he puts the night vision goggles back on. The person now is 100 meters closer, and it's the Taliban guy is 100 meters closer, traveled at a speed with which is impossible for a human. He's freaked out. He thinks that something is happening, someone's coming, pulls the gun back up, and there's no one there. Nothing is there. Puts the goggles back on. The person's gone, puts the gun back up, and then something taps on his shoulder. So this is an observation effect that seems to be a mastered experience by entities in the paranormal, and that includes UFOs, by the way. And you'll also see this with Sasquatch, and you'll also see this with ghosts. So I just found that something to think about, the observation effect. With the paranormal, it's always consciousness to consciousness, individual to individual. You don't get a ghost displaying something in front of hundreds of people. It's displayed it can be in groups, but it's typically with individuals. And for me, when I was helping that ghost transition, I was individual to individual. I was very aware, it was aware of me, and I was aware of it. Same with, aliens. They abduct individuals. Yes, they can abduct groups of people, but typically they're interacting with individual to individual. Sasquatch interacts with individual to individual as well too. And these paranormal entities really prefer to, or at least it seems to, an alignment, and it's consciousness to consciousness. I also draw on, I'm the one to always kind of put together the pieces of the kind of higher level beings, the Jesus, Krishna, Buddhas, right? They all had like small amount of disciples, right? Consciousness to consciousness, high level beings, energy beings, beings that are aware that you're not just the body. You end up drawing to consciousness. And so that's a part of also the sightings you'll see here today. Distortion of audio and visual. There are stories of Bigfoot, cracking and breaking trees and making trees fall over and throwing boulders, but you can't see it. And you're watching and staring a landscape and you're hearing destruction. That sounds like trees are being knocked over and there's nothing being shown. Ghosts, well known. My buddy had a story that his restaurant was haunted, and in the basement, they would hear dishes breaking. They would go downstairs and nothing would be there. I heard of a haunted hotel, and they would hear the furniture moving. Furniture was being dragged across floors. They would come downstairs, nothing was moving. So you get this kind of cross visual audio type distortion that occurs between all these types of paranormal activity that seems to be consistent. And I'll actually show how some UFO activity does this as well too. Distortion of time. Ghosts can be locked in their era. People can see, maids. I think we had one person on here who was actually talking about a maid that came into their house and they were dressed from a certain era, and the person didn't see them and they were just a ghost, kind of caught in time. And people, it's well known in the phenomenon that aliens can manipulate time. So there does seem to be something to do with distortion of time. Creates, interacts, or communicates through synchronicities. I will display, you'll see a bit of that here as well too. My own ghost story had a synchronicity with which you can read about. I was meditating and I had an event that occurred in the meditation that was aligned with an event that would happen that day regarding the ghost that I would eventually help. UFO alien stories are always filled with synchronicities. My own is filled with ripe synchronicities. Whitley Strieber, one of the most famous contact events, has all these synchronicities that no one talks about. They kind of avoid the synchronicity aspect of the story. And yet what that would display is a mastery of space and time, or at least an understanding it maybe by the entity in the paranormal. So there's something going on here that isn't understood. But if you're having a distortion of space and time, then you're most likely being able to interact with synchronicities. Childlike energy, playful, purity of consciousness. There is so many of the missing 411 cases appears to be a Sasquatch-like creature that takes children for a day or two and then brings them back. They appear to like interacting with children. And that reminded me of the White Room experience I had with my gray alien, in which we were in this kind of heightened childlike state. And I feel that at the core of their hearts are this kind of child purity. And also that purity helped me interact with the ghost that I helped transition, because I was able to pinpoint its core, its pure self, even though it was shrouded by the misery that it was stuck with and why it was still in the physical realm. The ability to read what you're thinking, I mentioned this. So that ghost that I interacted with knew I could hear it, and we were communicating through telepathy. Entities that can enter your dreams. Sasquatch. Les Stroud has a story about how the Sasquatch entered his dream. Aliens into your dreams, ghost stories. There are plenty of credible ghost stories where the ghost actually communicates with the human through a dream. High-level beings can enter dreams. My guru has entered my dreams before. Extended level of belief invites more compelling experiences. This is completely with my experience I had with the elder. The more I believed, the more she showed. And you have to understand that this is where this goes, right? This is the whole thing with crop circles. Why a crop circle? But in the end of the day, you have to extend yourself. Because you're dealing with another dimension, you're dealing with another realm, and your belief system impacts your ability to experience it. So when you lower your, your ego and you increase your sense of awe and wonder, you'll experience more of that mystery. And there's definitely an interaction between your belief system and what you can experience with these beings in the paranormal. Lastly, everyone who follows this field understands clearly it interacts with the electromagnetic frequencies. Aliens are well known for turning things on and off. Electromagnetic, we'll actually have a sighting here today that shows that. Ghosts, my own ghost that I interacted with, it 100% interacted with technology that I was using to ask it questions. And Les Stroud has a story where he couldn't capture the Sasquatch because it seemed to have disrupt the camera right at the moment that he would have caught the picture. So pretty interesting stuff. So that's my physics of the paranormal, things to look for as we move forward here. So this is Wilbert Smith. Basically, Wilbert Smith was a Canadian guy, so I'm always proud for that. Project Magnet was a unidentified flying object study program established by Transport Canada in December 1950 under the direction of Wilbert Smith, senior radio engineer for Transport Canada's broadcast and measurement section. It was formally active until mid-1954 and informally active without government funding until Smith's death in 1962. So he was interested in geomagnetism, which allowed him to conclude that UFOs are of extraterrestrial origin driven by magnetic forces and are in fact representatives of parallel universes. So he actually came to Vancouver in 1961 to a UFO club. Where that club is, we don't know anymore. And he claimed to have communicated with extraterrestrials himself. So he was a government official, calling them boys from heaven. He actually has some cooperation with my own story. So he actually says, the planet has been colonized many times by people from other places, and our current human race is the siblings of these people. Well, that matches what the elder said to me during my 25th contact event, in which she kind of alluded that the human was given a time to evolve. And I think I put that slide here. There will be a time where humanity's dark ages will be over and the new sun will rise. So she's basically explaining in this paragraph that to some degree, the aliens gave humans a space on the planet to evolve. And he says something very similar, that aliens have colonized and used the planet over and over, and now we're in a period where humans have it. And yeah, so that's kind of a very interesting piece to the puzzle there. But the most important part is that he focused on the UFO phenomenon as a geomagnetic phenomenon, which is consistent with paranormal activity. So we know from paranormal investigations that the realm of ghosts, and therefore the realm of paranormal, including Bigfoot, aliens, and UFOs, is electromagnetic by nature and uses and interacts with consciousness. So Joshua P. Warren has done really good research on the paranormal around its bioelectromagnetic and electromagnetic fields. And yeah, it's pretty conclusive that the ghost phenomenon is electromagnetic by nature. So this is all a giant picture. And that's what we're looking at today, our geomagnetic, electromagnetic phenomenon that seems to create paranormal, what I call paranormal ecosystems, where you'll find lots of paranormal activity in very consistent locations. So right before we're going to go into the sightings, this is what I add, what I think missing 411 is, because I don't want to scare people. I don't like scaring people. And I don't believe they're from UFOs. There's some things that don't add up about that. So number one, people can go missing in paranormal ways over large periods of time in these locations. In some cases, it's over decades. You'll see today, I'll show you Mount Seymour has 6 missing 411 cases in it, but it starts in I think it's the 40s or the 50s, but ends in the 2010s. So you're talking decades, over decades, and that makes it indicative of something living there as opposed to UFO activity. And the other is the evidence left appears territorial. When there is evidence of something with which the human maybe left, either anyway, you'll see that in certain circumstances there is evidence left. Humans, it looks to me often that it's either humans encroaching into an area or a threat of taking its food. In this case, there's tons of missing 411 cases tied to hunters. And Sasquatch has been known to hunt deer. There has been credible sightings of Sasquatch chasing deer, and that's obviously for food. So you can almost imagine a circumstance here in which something is living in the forest, not liking humans encroaching on the territory. And often missing 411 seems to involve something that looks like that. We'll kind of delve into that here. Third, aliens and UFOs are not shy to expose themselves to cattle mutilations. Ian, I think you can attest to that with Linda Moulton Howe's content. We have police officers saying UFOs were sighted the night before. Missing 411 doesn't have it. Go ahead, yeah.
That's right, yes. It's well known about the cattle mutilations and the link to ETs, the lights in the sky, the landings, the ETs who are actually seen on the ground with the cattle. In fact, a case happened actually not too far from where I live in the UK of a guy actually witnessing cattle being lifted up into beams, and he actually saw them on board the craft as well.
Right. So, and the point people don't understand about missing 411 as well is there are often, once a person goes missing, you have 100, if not more, search and rescue out. And if anybody was in the area to witness a light, a orb, a UFO, an alien, it might go into the, even the media for that case would want to take something like that, even for the fear factor. But you never have that. You never have a person going missing in the missing 411 phenomenon. At least not in Canada. I know there's 2 cases that David Paulides points to in the States, and I can't speak to those cases. But in the case of Canada, you don't have anything like that. You don't have the day the person went missing, someone happened to see a UFO in the area. Never happens. Yet they're not shy to show themselves in this regard with cattle mutilations. So for me, I see that as an inconsistency, and it doesn't look like it adds up to me that it's UFOs. So the one who I think is smart here is David Paulides for what I think is the actual missing 411 phenomenon is. And David Paulides actually, he has a whole Bigfoot side to himself where he has books on Sasquatch. And he's the one who said, hey, why don't we go back and look at the indigenous stories now? Because now it does kind of look like it's a paranormal entity. So let's go see what they were talking about. And it turns out there are myths about, the Sasquatch is that it can disappear, it can shapeshift, it can hide itself and become trees, or it can become something, and they also call them the star people. And so if you go into other indigenous stories, Hammerson Peters here, so I pull up his channel. I like this guy a lot. He does a really good Canadian research, and he has an Indian Legends of the Interior Plateau. Even just watching that video, you'll see that there's a lot of things in the forest actually. And that's what I think we're dealing with. I think some paranormal things expose themselves and others do not. And maybe they're versions of Sasquatch, maybe they are Sasquatch, or maybe they're not at all. Who knows? But that's what I think we're dealing with here, is a paranormal entity that still can take things and take people if need to be. So is the result, what I think missing 411 is the result of geographical area containing a paranormal ecosystem based on electromagnetic frequencies and currents natural to the environment.